With almost every rail fanning channel on YouTube, coverage of the Class 1s that run through your area are basically a given. However, depending on where you live, or in some cases how you rail fan, certain aspects of the rail industry can sometimes be overlooked, and that was certainly the case for me when it came to regionals and short lines. My history with regionals and short lines have definitely been interesting, to say the least. There have also been many attempts by me over the years to pay more attention to these smaller railroads. Anyways, kick your shoes off and relax, grab some popcorn, some snackies, and a drink of your choice, and let's get started with possibly the most interesting video that I have posted thus far. My first sighting of a regional or short line came not too far from the beginning on June 30th, 2015, with Norfolk Southern Mixed Freight Train 195 coming up the Sandusky District, passing the Cook Road Railroad crossing. Since this was a re-record on a nearly dead, outdated laptop, the new clip I got of this old footage unfortunately isn't the greatest. If eagle-eyed viewers were paying attention, you would have noticed a very faded GP30 trailing fourth out on 195 today. It took me about 5 years after seeing this to fully figure out which company this locomotive belonged to, which happened to be the Carolina Coastal Railway. The only reason I was able to figure out this locomotive's owner was by looking at pictures and videos from other rail fans who caught the same train at the time. Since you viewers are probably tired of looking at the same crappy footage, here's a picture that I was able to find of what the locomotive actually looked like, and this was the best picture that I could find, as there's not too many good pictures of this locomotive on the internet. Several years later, on September 4th, 2020, in between classes, I would venture out to the Route 161 railroad crossing on CSX's Columbus subdivision with a couple of trains on my target list. While this one wasn't on the immediate target list, I'm glad I caught it. The Selkirk, New York to Columbus mixed freight train Q635 had one of CSX's sticker units in the lead, as well as a New England Central GP40 fourth out. While a destination for this 4-axle E&D can't be determined to this day, I'm glad that I caught it, as it was something a little bit different. I wouldn't end up seeing any equipment from a regional or short line for a couple of years until April 24th, 2022. After an agonizing 3-hour wait, a westbound mixed freight train would show up on Norfolk Southern's Dayton District at CP 146, specifically NS 171, on its daily journey between Conway, Pennsylvania and Chattanooga, Tennessee, with a special locomotive in its consist today. Trailing third behind the two Norfolk Southern GEs was a former Iowa Pacific E9A. With all of its logos scabbed out, I would find out after the fact that it was bound for Cater Parrott RailNet down in Georgia. This unique piece of railroad history is still sitting on Cater Parrott RailNet property to this very day, although the use for said locomotive is still unclear. At the time this was taken, it's important to mention that I still relied on my parents for transportation, and we didn't stay for the whole train. My next sighting of a regional or short line would come just over a year later on May 9th, 2023, while on a trip to the Berea Depot restaurant. Heading westbound on CSX's Cleveland Shortline subdivision was CSX Mixed Freight M561 on its daily journey between Selkirk, New York and Cincinnati, Ohio. Surprise was seen trailing third on M561 today, which was a former Quebec North Shore and Labrador SD40-2. The reason why this locomotive was so far from its home territory still remains to be seen to this day, but I can speculate it was either heading for the scrapyard or for a continued career on the Indiana and Ohio Railroad once it got to Cincinnati. Later on in the year, on July 8, 2023, I would venture out to the Route 161 railroad crossing on CSX's Columbus subdivision for a CSX L457. Traveling with the mixed freight from Walbridge, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio was a former CSX SD70 Ace lettered for the Robertville and Cyclone Railway. My guess to this locomotive showing up in Ohio was that it needed maintenance, as it still serves for its short line in Canada as of 2024. Sightings of regionals and short lines would go silent once again until I was caught by a complete surprise on August 6, 2024 in Fort Myers, Florida off of Colonial Boulevard. While on a family vacation, I noticed that we were within arm's reach of the Seminole Gulf Railway at their Fort Myers shops, and I was able to carve out an hour to check this railroad out. The first group of equipment included a rustic FP7, a GP9, and a B39-8 that were unfortunately in the process of being scrapped. When it comes to the railroad's active fleet, it mostly consists of B39-8s, a couple B40-8s, another FP7 that was converted into a cab car, in addition to a GP10. While most of this equipment is used for Seminole Gulf's freight service, the last two locomotives are commonly used on the railroad's murder mystery dinner train. While riding the dinner train was an option we considered, it was never acted upon. Despite that fact, seeing the Seminole Gulf Railway during a time when I wasn't intending on seeing any trains at all was definitely a sight my pair of sore eyes enjoyed, considering the path my life was taking at the time, and still does to this very day. After that short excursion to the Seminole Gulf Railway, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity presented itself to me back in Ohio on March 13, 2025, at the Route 161 railroad crossing on CSX's Columbus subdivision. CSX mixed freight train M635 was making another daily trip between Selkirk, New York and Columbus, Ohio. but this time with a quartet of former Pan Am Railways SD40-2s. Since this was taken after CSX's acquisition of Pan Am Railways, these SD40-2s were in the process of being disposed of. While initially being speculated on heading to the scrapyard, two of these Pan Am SD40-2s recently found a new home on the New York Susquehanna and Western. However, the current whereabouts of the other two SD40-2s in this quartet is still unclear. Another once-in-a-lifetime opportunity presented itself to me just under a month after seeing the Pan Am Quartet, but this time on Norfolk Southern Sandusky District at McCord Park. Traveling up the Sandusky District today was a rerouted NS-73Z loaded coal train, far from its home territory on the C&O and TP in Tennessee. Mixed into the sea of BNSF pumpkins was a Montana Rail Link SD-70 Ace. What was once a mighty Class 2 in the states of Montana and Washington State, Montana Rail Link is now part of BNSF as they terminated the lease given to the Montana Rail Link from one of their predecessors rather early, by about 20 to 25 years. What was virtually impossible prior, through the BNSF merger, made instances of seeing Montana Rail Link locomotives far from their namesake state and territory at least somewhat possible. The most recent example of me seeing a regional or short line came on December 17th, 2025 on CSX's Columbus subdivision, once again at the Route 161 railroad crossing. A 28-car M634 is seen making its way northbound up the Columbus subdivision on its daily journey between Columbus, Ohio and Selkirk, New York, with a special locomotive trailing third today. Unfortunately, heading to the scrapyard was a Guilford Rail System GP40. Guilford Rail Systems is the name that Pan Am Railways used to operate under until they purchased the naming rights from the airline of the same name. With another fallen flag crossed off the list, this is where we now conclude yet another video. With this video showcasing my history with regionals and short lines, it was not just about the catches themselves, but what they shared in common. I never had the means to go see these railroads on their home territory, and waited till I got super lucky to see some of their equipment on the Class 1 railroads trackage. I've been trying to mitigate this issue over the last couple years to the best of my ability to pay attention to this underrepresented sector of the rail industry, which you will see in this new series. If you enjoyed this video, consider checking out some other ones of mine. Leave a like or a comment down below to share your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, and tap the notifications bell if you want to be notified for a new video getting posted on the channel just like this. Until next time, this is All Ohio Railfan, signing off.